low. Guitars bend, pads breathing, the slow. Breath held tight, the storm starts to grow. We sharpen the truth, ready to explode. Can't call out rhinos if you're a rhino. Speak with them like the beat's not a path to tone. Oh, cash just saints blink while the crowd loses sane. Oh, I spit raw pages, every line a broken homo. Can't be bought, can't be sold. Gave my soul and truth not gold. We raise the flags while the fate keeps cold.
All right, so tonight, guys, we're going to do something so different, out of the norm for us. I have a poll on the screen, and I'd appreciate it if you guys go ahead and weigh in on the poll. I guess StreamYard now allows us to actually place polls on the show. So
That's pretty awesome.
we're promoting something, or I say promoting. We're going to talk about something called Satan's Little Season. A lot of people may not have heard of this, but Satan's Little Season is the idea that Jesus actually returned. And before you say it's crazy, it can't possibly be true. I think you should probably hear all of the facts before you come to that conclusion, because there are many people that have had opportunity over the last 100+ years to change the gospel and try to make you believe things that aren't necessarily true. But what I'm going to tell you is this: that the Bible is much easier to understand and read than what you have previously been told. That is for sure. That is absolutely for sure. So with that said, Maurice is going to take kind of the position of the guy asking me some questions, because I have studied this in detail, and so I'm going to be pulling things up and going through each piece of it as he
Would you like to lay out the theory first?
Um,
Kind of just
so-
talk about, like, I guess what we're going to talk about, because just saying Satan's Little Season, it doesn't
okay,
like bring people in as much as it should. So
I get you. It's a very convoluted and deep, but also very simple. I wouldn't even call it a theory. It is a doctrine, but it states that Jesus actually came back in the year 1970. And in the year 1970, the reason why we can say 70, and this is where, because if I pull the one thread, the whole ball of yarn just
wait,
kind of.
not 1970.
And excuse me, 70 AD. I said 1970. Excuse me, 70
Okay.
70 AD. So
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
There was a 42-week prophecy given by Daniel, and that 42 weeks, a lot of you may have heard it talked about as, that 3.5 years out of the 7 years where there's war. Well, the war that took place started in 66 AD, culminated in 70 AD with the temple being torn down. And when that temple came down, and I'll go over this later, but Josephus, Tacitus, other historians who were not Christians actually talked about seeing angels surrounding the city in the clouds. And then that began the Dark Ages. And everyone knows the Dark Ages are a time which there's not a lot written about. And there's no progression, no inventions, no moves forward. So like a whole period in history, world history, where there's just not a lot known. There are amazing buildings that were built during that time, but they told us that they built them in the 1800s, which we know is not true. They found them, they excavated them, and all the other verses in the Bible.
This is the big theory that with those old world buildings, as you say, like if you look up My Lunch Break on YouTube, he kind of goes over this entire theory, and he goes actually through many of the buildings that we see, not just in North America, but all around the world, the old
Yeah,
cathedral
Europe
style
has some
buildings.
amazing ones.
Yeah, and along with every Capitol building here in America, right? And or the giant banks, or like the World Fairs that you used to see. Those buildings, they say, or I guess in this theory, would have been built by that civilization during that 1,000-year period that we're told is the Dark Ages. But in this theory, that those 1,000 years were actually the 1,000 years after Jesus came back, and it was prosperity, and it was basically perfect on earth. And once that 1,000 years,
Not perfect, but Satan was, he was chained up and he was thrown into the abyss. So although there was still evil during that time, it's because we chose it, not because we were influenced to it, right?
Right. Okay. But then after that ended, we have what is Satan's little season, and it's the time of the Great Deception. All right, and that is basically the period we're living through right now, which would be the Great Deception. So a lot of the history that we were told, the 1,000 years, and I mean, even the way America was founded, was basically all kind of pre-written or made up, rather. It is to deceive you. It's to deceive all of the nations of the world that humans have always been this one way, and it's always been war, slavery, conflict, cowboys and Indians, that whole story. But if you look at in Washington State, our Capitol building was supposedly built in 1910, and they sourced all of these giant these giant slabs of granite and quartz, marble. I mean, the entire building is astonishing, and that's before they had all these roads that they have now. These transportation systems. It's just and they don't have any records on virtually any of these buildings on who built it or how long it took to build, what company they hired. They just say, the materials were sourced from France and Germany and China.
It's not even that. They go further than that. They say they were fake buildings. They were just plywood and plaster, and they were facade put up for show.
Well, that's for the World Fair and stuff. But I'm talking about the Washington State Capitol that we have here. The way that they say that they built it was just, it doesn't make much sense. And that's with almost every of the old world buildings all around the country that are generally speaking owned by the government or the banks or churches. It's all three. And the Great Deception, Satan's little season, that's what we're living through right now. So we'll go into that a little bit more detail here coming soon. But we'll start at the beginning, which will be fun. All right, Eddie.
All right.
There is, with everything going on in the world right now, we have rumors of war. We have kind of war starting. We have, Iran, Israel. Over the past, I think it was last year, they sacrificed the red heifer. And they're kind of building up this idea that they're trying to fulfill Revelation and bring in their own Messiah. But the Bible actually says differently if you read the text. Now, I'm curious as to why it would be said that Jesus had already returned and we had already gone. Token white guy. I love it. Kentucky Pete said, "Sup, Maurice?" And token white guy. Thank you. Actually, what's funny is he's actually just as much native as I am. He's half native, so
Yep.
He just looks a lot more white. He got the white gene.
What?
White.
My sister looks more like your sister than my sister. It's true.
So what does it say in the Bible that makes you think that Jesus actually already came back? What gives you that idea?
Let's go through it, because I instead of me giving my opinion on these verses, I want to throw them up on the screen. I have them right here, so let me share my screen here.
Let's do it.
And so I'll start by saying this. Jesus told the disciples several times, I believe upwards of 6 different times, that he was going to return in their lifetimes. All right. So you got to ask yourself, is if the Bible has one lie in it, the entire thing is false. And Jesus is incapable of telling such a lie. So let's go ahead through this real quick. And I'll say first, I'll start with saying that Revelations 20, verses 1 through 3, is where I believe we are right now. And it explicitly states that Satan is bound for 1,000 years. And then he's released to deceive the nations. Then he's done and he's set to deceive the nations no more. And that he'd be loosed one last season. That's this season. The proponent says that the binding happened after 70 AD. That's our take on it. Now, let's talk about the verses where Jesus says that he's still alive. Where he said he was going to come back. Jesus says, so I know this by heart, but I'm going to pull them up. So one, Jesus tells Peter and John that they won't go throughout all the towns of Israel and preach the gospel. Actually, he uses the word Asia, believe it or not, that they won't go throughout all Asia and preach the gospel before the Son of Man returns. Second time, he tells them in front of John, he says that you won't taste death until you see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. And again, he says, this generation will not pass away before I return. So I think those are pretty, they speak for themselves, right? But let's go through what I want to give you the scripture that what I'm talking about. It says, he is returning. And there, lights out. But also know this. The two other people that I'm going to be referencing that actually write about his return, neither one of those guys, Tacitus and Josephus, neither of them are Christian. Matter of fact, neither of them are actually religious. They were historians. If you read Josephus's History of the World, it reads like, on Monday this happened, and it's very bland and dry. It is not that kind of writing. But let's go through it. Here's his parallel in Mark 9:1, and I got to make this bigger for my old eyes. Mark 9:1, and he said to them, truly I say unto you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power. Luke 9:27, but I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God. Right? But I want to stop there because I want you to understand that everybody thinks that they're going to see a physical kingdom of God come down, just like the Jews thought they were going to see Jesus and he was going to be a warrior. He was going to come and fight Rome, and they were completely fooled too. But if you remember when Jesus was talking to Pontius Pilate and they asked him, are you the king of the Jews? And he said, you have said truly that I'm a king, but my kingdom is not of this world. And then he also goes on to say that the kingdom of heaven is invisible. And it's invisible to man's eye. So there are the verses right there. And then he goes on to correct one of the disciples because he tells one of the disciples that he's going to be stretched out. He literally tells them how he's going to die, while he tells the one standing next to him, but you're going to live. And that goes right into the buildings that you were referencing, Maurice, because it's really important that people understand how those buildings are actually built, so they understand why we think that those disciples that were there were actually able to utilize those, or how they are proof of anything. Those buildings had columns, concrete columns. Those columns were
not necessarily just concrete. I mean, some of them are like marble. Some of them are
granite, marble. And they use the same technology that we seen represented in the Tesla coil. So there are many people out there that theorize that these buildings drew power from what people refer to as the ether, right? They also had doorways in them that were 20 foot large. And it was said that some of these buildings had to have more than one person just to open the door, to push the door forward. And there are a lot of evidence that, Jesus said when he comes back, we'll have perfect bodies. right? We'll get a glorified body. So when he returned, and we'll talk about that in 70 AD, as is written about, those disciples that were there, they would have been changed in the twinkling of an eye, like Jesus said. In the twinkling of an eye. Let's take a look at some of those buildings. There's one there. Now, I'm telling you this because this is what I do for a living. I travel all around the country and, in fact, the world. In my younger years, I did way more traveling, working on very, very large projects, U.S. embassies. I mean, you name it. Some stuff I can't even say, but I worked on a lot of different buildings. And I can tell you right now, just looking at this, the edifices, the amount of material, how they would have had to put that material up and place it. This is just not something that, even if you said we built it in the 1800s, was possible to be done in the time frame that they said it took them to actually put these buildings up. I mean, that's just one example. Here's another example, a much older example. And this is from the World's Fair. Look how that steel is bent, and all those trusses go over that. I mean, this was the day of horse and buggy, not laser levelers and the things that you would need. Now, also, just like it says in 20, before that Jesus he said he was going to come down with fire prior, not the end of Satan's little season where fire was, but prior to that. Fire, enough fire will petrify wood, right? It'll petrify wood and it'll melt stone. So I'm going to show you a couple of other examples. That is in the middle of the desert in Utah. That very clearly to me looks like a tree trunk.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different subject that we can go down. But to
that's
be honest,
evidence. That's evidence of the fire, right? That's
okay.
Evidence after the Younger Dryas. Here's more evidence. This actually, and if you looked around the backside of it, you'd see even more evidence. But you can see how the stone goes up and then melts sideways and tilts, and you see it again in Petra. So, Petra is probably the best example because a lot of people say that Petra was carved out of stone, but it's not carved out of stone. Petra was most likely an entire building that was then hit with fire at such high levels that the building melted around the facade in the front, and you can actually see the lava dripping from the doorway where it wasn't carved that way.
Okay. So these buildings, okay. How do you explain that there's melted buildings and then there's still buildings standing?
Because he never said he was going to do that to the entire world. He said he was going to do that in the regions where his people were surrounded. Right? Okay. That's what the Bible says. That his people were surrounded, and this took place.
So this is kind of taking on the idea that the ancient civilization that people believe built these buildings, like the big theory going around as of late is Tartaria, right? And that they kind of excuse, or they kind of just say that it was a worldwide civilization that was clearly advanced because, there's one thing missing from all of these buildings that is very, very interesting when you think about it. Because of the grand architecture,
I know where you're going to go.
That it takes to build, they didn't include bathrooms in these buildings
or kitchens, or kitchens.
So why is that? What would like
do
if you were able to build something like that?
Do you think that those people were pissing and pooing on the streets? They were so
in buckets and then throwing it out.
Yeah, they're so advanced that they were able to put up these buildings that we just showed, these buildings, right? But they're so primitive that they're pee-peeing and poo-pooing on the street. No. If Christ returned and those people who were here who believed in Christ were changed in the twinkling of an eye, do you still think that they needed to use the bathroom or eat in a kitchen? No, they wouldn't.
Mm-mm. That's the interesting part about this is, okay, during the Dark Ages, all these buildings were built, and there was peace on earth, and the 1,000 years that we're told now as the Dark Ages was actually a time of great prosperity and without Satan in this world, ruling the world, basically.
That's right.
So during that time, would you be able to elaborate in any way, like what was going on during that 1,000 years?
There are some historical records of what took place in that 1,000 years, but understand this, right? And I'm gonna show you something and how you were all tricked with the calendar. Christ returned in 70 AD, and I'm going to make that case, and I'm going to show you the eyewitnesses, right? We'll get to that. I want to keep it so you guys all understand it. But if Christ returns in 70 AD, and that starts the beginning of his millennial reign, 1,000 years from 70 AD would only put us at 1,070, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense, right? So people would say that doesn't work because we're in the year 2026. Right? So how does this work? Well, if you look up Pope Gregory, Maurice, if you'd go ahead and look that up, Pope Gregory changing the calendar.
Oh yeah.
And you'll see that Pope Gregory changed the calendar, and it's anywhere between 500 to 700 years that the calendar was manipulated. And so if you do the math of when the 1,000-year reign would have ended, and the Satan's little season began, it would have started exactly, and get ready for this, 1776.
How about that? Okay, so this is where I believe it starts to get really, really interesting.
Oh, the symbolism is amazing. It's undeniable from that point forward. Go ahead. I don't want to jump around.
Well, okay. So 1776 roughly is where our timeline was added to. And so once the 1,000-year reign ends, what is supposed to happen after that?
Oh, let's not skip past what happened at the end there, because remember, if the saints ruled with Christ for that 1,000 years,
yeah,
and when that 1,000 years was over, they went. They didn't stay here. So that means that you and I are the children of people who rejected Christ, right? And a lot of the population of the world at that point was wiped out, and a lot of them left. Others were wiped out. So this is where, I'm just trying to keep it linear, chronological, whatever, for people, that you'll notice that the world's population dipped and humankind was almost, it looks like, eradicated. And then if you look at the orphan trails, and we can even get into the Cabbage Patch Kids and that kind of stuff later, but look up the Oregon Trails for me, Maurice, and read what that is, so that people can get some respect. Orphan trails.
Orphan trails?
Yeah, just look that up.
Ooh. Well, I mean, the point that I wanted to get across is basically after the 1,000 years. So what basically happened was the people who accepted Christ went up with Christ, and then, like, what happened?
But that's not the first time.
But what happened here on Earth? So yeah, the second time. So after the 1,000 years and Jesus return, goes back. What happened here on Earth after he left?
After he left, there was judgment. Right, there was some judgment for those who denied Christ. There was a time of, unease, obviously war, and that's why they had to repopulate the world. And there were not a lot of people in the world at that time. So you'll notice that a lot of the kids that they used to do this came from one specific region in the world, and they were sent out to all of the other countries. That's why I said look up the orphan trails and actually read what that is, so people understand, because it leads into everything else.
Well, it's basically the largest organized child relocation efforts in U.S. history. So basically what happened is
it's not just U.S., it's everywhere. Yeah. The world.
They're specifically... from what I'm seeing right here, it's specifically talking about the U.S. But I could see it being around the world because they were bringing hundreds of thousands of kids from. It was the largest child organization relocation efforts in U.S. history. It moved an estimated 200 to 250,000 orphaned, abandoned, or homeless children, mostly from New York City and other East Coast cities, by train to rural homes in the Midwest, South, and West. So, and this was in the 1850s. So this is years after.
Where are you finding that at?
On Grok. Or I'm asking Grok. But I mean, it's orphantrainpot.org is the original source. So it talks about, I mean, okay, if we look back through our known history, like if you look at human population from, early on until something happened in 1776 or right around that time where you see a big spike in human population, and then it does this. And what's odd is that if humans are able to repopulate in that way, and, I mean, we'll get excuses like, oh, well, we started getting better technology and we started being able to have that many people. But the problem with that is that humans repopulate at a certain rate, generally speaking, when they're fertile and when they can. Like it's hard to believe that humans were just barely making it by for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden we're able to just get billions of people all around the world right at the same time. So with this theory, basically what it suggests is that after the 1,000 years, Jesus left and Satan returned to ruling the world, and we are experiencing a great deception where basically 1,000 years was added to our history, or roughly 1,000 years was added to our history. And the funny thing about this particular theory is that a lot of people would say, no, we have documents, we have all these accounts of what happened in the past, we know what happened. But would you expect in all reality, would you expect that if this were true and if Satan took over and the great deception was put in place to deceive all the nations, what makes you think that there would be no paper trail of what happened, as if this was just a flippant, deception, like he's just standing there with the, like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain? That's not how it works. A great deception is basically it fills in history, so we're lost and we can't find our way back to God in a certain way.
That was the intention.
Yeah, and
that was
so
the intention.
It almost seems like a lot of these historical events that happened, I mean, have either been propagandized or they were written just basically to make us believe that humans were one thing when really were another.
And here I'll read you the alternate theory from what I'm looking at here on Grok as well. It says mass die-off and repopulation, a mud flood, energy event, or catastrophic link to Tartaria, supposed fail, wipe out and depopulated much of the advanced old world, civilized in America and elsewhere. The sudden abundance of orphans with no records, parents, or memories was the elite solution to repopulating empty cities and farms. And
that's another. Well, I mean, really, you should hone down on this point a little bit, because if you start looking into like the oldest insane asylums, right? These giant buildings that were built with around areas where the population was in the hundreds, right? So they had this town of a couple hundred people, and they just decided to build this giant insane asylum or orphanage that could house all these kids. And so if you think about it during the time, like, it wouldn't actually make sense why they would build this one building to house insane people or orphans in order to, fix whatever's going on in their community. But in all reality, this was a way to kind of repopulate the earth, and whatever elites there are, if you want to call them the Illuminati or whatever, they're the ones who took a lot of the knowledge from the prior civilization that turned away from God and are basically
post-millennial, which is usually mixed up with pre-diluvian.
Say it again.
Post millennia, post
Okay.
Jesus' 1,000 years,
Yeah.
which a lot of people confuse with pre-flood, right? Because they think a lot of these technologies happened before the world was flooded, not considering that during that 1,000 years, the technology was absolutely massive, more than we could have ever imagined, and that the people who were in tune with that, knew about it, benefited from it, they went with Christ. And it's not the first time. But before I go into that, I'm going to ask you, when was the first baby incubator? Like a preemie baby, they would go into an incubator in a hospital if they're born early, that sort of thing. When was the first one made? If you look that up.
Well, it looks like early 1900s.
All right, here I'm showing you pictures right here, right? And these pictures are from the 1800s. And what you're looking at is this is a circus slash carnival. And as you see there, it says infants and incubators. Come in basically and buy your incubator with a living baby in it. People were wanting children so bad they would show up to these circus carnivals and literally go pick up a child, buy a child. And they're in several newspapers. You can see the doctor holding two babies there. Here's one of the incubators here to your right. And I mean, they were basically going in, and these people were, unable to have children. And so these babies were the link to starting the population again. It was around that time that it happened. And as you see, here's the exhibit right there, and the nurse there with all the incubators. And this was before they told us the incubators. They started these things before they told us the first incubator was ever created, which was not until the 30s, between the 30s and 40s of the 1900s. These things took place in the late 1800s, much earlier 1900s. So they're lying to us about our history.
Yeah, I mean okay. I'd say that the most interesting part about this is the way that we were told what happened. And we know for a fact that it's wrong. Like what I was taught in school is that all the pyramids and everything was built by civilization thousands of years ago because they started to figure out how to use agriculture, and they had like free time on their hands, so they're like, let's build giant pyramids for some reason, and as tombs because we're all slaves. And
not even one tomb has ever been found in a pyramid. Not even one.
Nope. And we're kind of figuring out now that like the pyramids of Egypt can be used as basically generators, working off the vibrations of the earth. The Y-Files has an excellent episode on this, by the way. If you wanted to go down that rabbit hole and figure out why a generator would be considered, or why a pyramid would be considered a generator, go down that rabbit hole because it's a lot of fun. But the way that we were told our history doesn't make any sense anymore because of something like Göbekli Tepe, right? That they found in Turkey, which is
they've even found older. They found older ones than Tepe, much older.
Yeah, and so their theory of what is going on, it's completely out the window. And they're still teaching this in school, by the way. Like my son, just a couple years ago when they were explaining this stuff, they are still teaching the same thing. And I was like, well, that's complete bullshit.
I want to correct myself for troll's sake. I said sale earlier. It wasn't sale, it was adopt. So these people were going to carnivals to adopt babies. They didn't sell them. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that was the repopulation effort. And so if you've ever felt, and I got to be sincere with this, if you ever felt like we're living in an experiment, like wondering why a lot of what we're seeing in this world doesn't make much sense. Like if you feel like you're a good person, but there's so much, and especially with the stuff coming out with the Epstein files and like a lot of this stuff, I mean, it feels like we're running an experiment in that, I mean, just everything that I learned in school has been almost universally proven wrong. The way that they taught us about health and food, that is completely wrong. It was completely
the food pyramid
by the
was
agriculture
a joke.
industry. Yeah, it's it's an absolute joke, and it's literally meant to keep us sick. The agriculture, big ag, works to make us sick, so we go to big pharma and can basically just become a perpetual money system. And it would almost make more sense to me that if we were talking about a great deception, and that humans were repopulated only a couple hundred years ago, and that we were just told this story of the way that cowboys and Indians, how the settlers moved west and wanted to, I guess just populate the entirety of the United States, but then they would like go build these giant monolithic buildings that turned out to be all state owned now or bank owned. A lot of that stuff doesn't make sense because we know what they were living in. Like we have a lot of pictures of like their houses back then. It was literally just like shacks made out of wood that were barely holding together. And
like Naked and Afraid type style houses.
Just slapped together. But they would go to work and then they would just, ship in these giant slabs of marble and granite and make these perfect giant buildings that are still standing today. And
still level today too.
They're perfect buildings. They're completely perfect buildings. And but we don't do that anymore. And we haven't done that in my lifetime or, in my parents' lifetime. Like none of these buildings were built. It's just like, it was right before our grandparents and right before that's when that's when humans used to build great things, and now all we can do is build these square structures, with steel, with completely different materials, and not carve perfect carvings over the arches in every building. It's like, well, maybe like the way I thought of it was just like, well, they just probably had more time on their hands back then. But then you kind of figure out like, okay, how much time would that have taken, and who was actually building these buildings? And they're like, well, it was slaves.
Let me tell you. I'm building a building right now that is less in size than that. And I have an abundance of engineers, upwards of 20 different companies and trades, and it's going to take us 3 years to do it. They said they've built those buildings for the World Fair in 2 years.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with like the Washington State Capitol. It was like, it was 4 years that they took to design and build and ship in all these materials from other countries and then transport them from, transport them inland to get these giant buildings that like they only built one of because I guess that's just the way it is. So
horse and buggy, boats over. All right.
Yeah, pulling it through mud, and it's like no. But you look up and you're like, okay, how many people did it take to do this? What company did they use? How long did they how many horses did they have at these sites to build this? And they don't explain any of that. They're just like, yep, they shipped them in. It was amazing. They did a great job. And then they just slapped the building up. It's like, oh, okay. If it was so easy to build these buildings back then, why have we gone so far backwards in like our buildings today? And I mean, the excuse we get mostly from people that I talk to is just, oh, well, it's all about, money. It's all about cutting costs. It's capitalism, basically. And it's like, I don't think so. I don't think
we pay millions of dollars to get things done faster, consistently. Millions. But let's go backwards, Maurice, to go forward, because we made it. I'm making the claim that Jesus returned. Yeah. And so if we go back to what Josephus wrote, and I'm going to read what he wrote. The account is frequently cited from the preterist interpretations of what he said. I'm going to say, show me the quotes. Show me, and I'll show you exactly where you can find it, in what book, chapter, and everything. And you can look it up for yourself and read it. And it's actually referenced by 3 different historians: Josephus, Tacitus, and I one more, but I forget the third guy's name. So Josephus wrote this: thus, although before the Jews' rebellion, there were stars resembling a sword which stood over the city, and a comet that continued for an entire year. So above him in the cloud, he saw an elongated star that looked like a sword that stayed in one place over Jerusalem for an entire year. Moreover, the eastern gate of the inner court of the temple was seen to be open of its own accord. Besides these, a few days after the feast, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about amongst the clouds in surrounding cities. Moreover, at the feast, which was called Pentecost, as the priests were going by night into the inner court of the temple, and they heard the sound of multiple people saying, "Let us remove hence." So there was a voice that came out of the standing temple at that time and said, let us go. Like, this is God leaving the temple, basically saying, okay, we're bouncing, let's go. Um, and then he goes on to basically, and this is the source, the Wars of the Jews, book 6, chapter 5, verse 3, and he goes on to say that had I not seen this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. So go back and look at Daniel. In the book of Daniel, look up the 42 weeks in Daniel. Look up Daniel 42 weeks and see what it says. There's a prophecy that Daniel wrote, a 42-week prophecy. What are you saying?
Almost certainly refers to a key part of the famous 70 weeks prophecy in the book of Daniel. Specifically, the final half of the 70th week, often described as 42 months or 3.5 years, 1,200
Yeah, 42 months. I got it wrong.
Okay. Right. A time, times, and half a time.
Half a time, right.
It's very
so
common
times,
shorthand. Okay.
Times means a year. Times, and half a time means 3.5 years, which is the 42 months. Now, how many months is between 66 AD and 70 AD?
48.
42. Because it was a half a year. So.
Oh, okay.
right at the 42nd month, the war started in 66 AD. Jesus made a prediction prior to ascending. It said, not one stone here will be left on another. The temple will be torn down. The war started in 66 AD, ended in 70 AD with the Romans coming in and sacking the temple, and all the stones were torn down. I even make the case that the Wailing Wall that the Jews not just the Jews, but the world consistently says is the outside wall of the temple is not the outside wall of the temple. That's actually the outside wall of Fortress Antonia, right? And if you look up Fortress Antonia, you can actually see it, and you'll see the wall that stands there today. And I would go further than that and say the reason why they want us to believe that that is the outside wall is because the Jews believe that the Messiah has to go through the east gate riding on a donkey and be hailed as King of the Jews. That's a prophecy. But if the east gate is no longer there because it was torn down, then the Messiah had to have already came. So they have to hold on to the fact that that is the wall, because if they agree to anything else, it destroys the entire preface to everything they're saying. Now I'm going to show you a picture of the outside wall of Camp Antonia. Watch this. Here it is. Here is Camp Antonia, and there's the outside wall. This is on the Temple Mount, right? This is the Wailing Wall right here. And this is an exact rendering of what Camp Antonia looked like. So if you look, there's a documentary, and you catch it on YouTube. It's called A City Lost. And they have excavated the site where the temple actually was, where the Bible says that the temple was in the city of David, Bethlehem. That is at the bottom of the Temple Mount. It's not on top of the Temple Mount where they're trying to tell you that it's at. Now it's at the bottom. The fortress was
so
on the
all
top.
all of our politicians go and kiss the wall of the Antonia Fortress.
That's it. That's
Nice.
where they're doing. They're kissing the wall of the Antonia Fortress.
Huh.
That's why the deception that is Zionism is permeating and why it's pushed so hard, which leads us into Revelations 3:9. Right? Revelations 3:9 is, the idea of they say they're Jews, inwardly they're not. They are in fact the synagogue of Satan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I love, by the way, I love this theory. I mean, to be honest, I don't know what to believe. Because this is one of those theories that it's like, well, it's like, in my mind, it's possible, because the story that I've been told growing up, it doesn't make as much sense. And like one of the things that I love to listen to throughout the day is like the Fat Electrician, because he'll tell really cool stories. And in order to believe that, I would have to believe the mainstream narrative of our history. History is written by the victors and things of that nature. But if you go back, there's so many gaps and holes and I guess really odd things about our history that doesn't make much sense. And it would actually make more sense if we were living through a great deception. And it would also make sense why we have, in the past 60 years had 65 million abortions just in America. We're missing 100 million people in America just through abortions alone. Like, people talk about the there were, in World War II, 6 million Jews were killed. And then before that, the Bolsheviks killed 30 million Christians. And it's like, okay, well, in America in the last 60 years, we've killed 100 million Americans through abortion, or 65 million. But if you factor in, that they would have had a lot of kids, or, 2 kids for at least replacement, we're missing at least 100 million people. And then you look at like the Epstein, what was going on with the Epsteins and all of that, and it's like, okay,
what if I said
there's more to this world than we're allowed to know?
What if I said to you, I can prove it without a doubt?
Well, I would love to hear it.
By using the Bible. All right, so let's first start with the fact that the Antichrist has already came and went.
Yeah.
Right? So that Antichrist, not Satan, not Lucifer, because that's not the Antichrist. That is a completely different person. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about what's called the Jewish gematria. So John was on the Isle of Patmos, and he wrote to the Christians that were in Rome at the time. And you've heard it said that the name of the beast is the number of a man, and his number is 606 scores, 666, right?
Yeah.
So here's how Nero equals. Now, he wrote that in 2 languages. He wrote it in Latin and he wrote it in Greek. Do numbers change from language to language? A number is universal. It doesn't change, right? So how then in the Latin does the Bible change the number 666 to 616? I'm going to explain. So this is the gematria, which you're looking at right here. Nun, resh, vav, final nun, ov, and semicolon, and resh. This is how you decode 666. So 666 is what Nero Caesar's name adds up to in Greek. 666. Nero Caesar. However, in Latin, his name is not Nero Caesar. And it says here, if you drop the final nun, which equals 50, which gives the Latin form of Nero Caesar without the N sound, you get 50 plus 20 plus 6 plus 100 plus 60 plus 20, which equals 616. Now, that is too damn precise to have any one person have one name equal both numbers referenced by John in the Bible as the beast. And I'll take it a step further. So not only is he talking about Nero Caesar being 666, he says it again because in Latin it's 616, and it still equals Nero Caesar's name if you in the Latin. But you heard it said that, and this is something called the gematria. This is how they would write in code, right? So the you heard it said that you wouldn't be able to buy and sell without the mark, right? There'd
Mm-hmm.
be a mark and that sort of thing. Well, Nero Caesar was the very first emperor of Rome to ever declare himself God while he was still alive. And in order to access the marketplaces in Rome, you had to go and worship before his altar, his statue. And how you'd worship is you would burn incense at the foot of this statue. And you would do is you would take the ashes of those incense and you would mark your head and your hand, and then you had access to the marketplace to buy and sell.
Wow. So there's been so many theories going around, like, oh, Jesus is going to come back. When is he going to come back? All this and that, and I feel like we've been just looking at the completely wrong.
We've been looking forward so much. Yeah, we're looking forward so much. We forgot to look backwards and read our Bible. I mean, people talk about the what's it called? The rapture, right? And they think that this is something that's going to happen in the future, not realizing that it happened in the past, and it was already written about in the same Bible that you read. Look up Matthew 27, saints coming out of the tombs. Just look it up and read it.
Let's see. Describes one of the most striking and unique events in the Bible, reportedly only in the Gospel of Matthew. It occurs right after Jesus' death on the cross. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. Coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many.
Yes. So everyone who believed in Christ, when Christ went down to what was called Sheol, we later translated that into hell, when hell actually had 3 different words. It was Sheol, Hades, and Gehenna. And in English, we just made it all hell. And we kind of lost the context of what he was talking about. But when Jesus went to the grave, he went down to free the saints from the grave. So he went into what he later termed as Abraham's bosom. And, in that story, the rich man and Lazarus. And he preached the gospel to the saints who were asleep, just like he said right there, asleep. And those who believed him came out of the grave. Now, you think that he raised everyone who believed in the Christ from the grave to have them die again? That would make no sense. This is not Lazarus who's dead for 4 days. These were saints who may have been dead 100, 200 years. Who knows how long a lot of these people were dead for. So they were bones, and they came back to life, and they walked into the city, and they were seen by many in Matthew 27. So these saints would have came back with perfect bodies, uncorruptible, undying, and they would have ascended with Jesus. And that would have meant that when he came back in 70 AD, which is what we just talked about, that those saints would have been ruling with him at that time.
What? Book of the Covenant, Ethiopian Bible. See,
I love the Ethiopian Bible. The Ethiopian Bible has it's 88 books in the Ethiopian Bible. I have it. I have the audio version. I have the hardback version. And a lot of what you see taken out of the Bible are things that point to Jesus. The book of Ezra, Edo the seer, Jasher, Enoch, 1, 2, and 3. In fact, and a lot of people don't know this, but in the book of Enoch, it literally says the Messiah's name will be Jesus in the English version. In the other version, it says Joshua, or Yeshua.
Yeah,
So
Yeshua. Huh.
it literally says the name of the Messiah.
So, on the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, this is when Satan's little season is supposed to end, because
Okay, go ahead.
there is a there's an end to it, and the way that they describe a season is 1,000 years, right?
Uh, an entire biblical day broken down into 4 parts, and each part being a season, being there 4 seasons. So 4 seasons are 1,000 years. It is
Oh, okay,
theorized that one season is 250 years.
got it.
So if the end of the millennial reign is 1776, then 250 years from 1776 puts us at 2026
Right now,
this year.
and let's see. Look up the 1933 World's Fair. Jews celebrate 3,000 years of religion. Yeah, no. So we were talking about the World's Fairs earlier. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. So
You're on the money. Who is that?
yeah, that was
Who is that?
Peter Rabbit.
Yeah, Peter Rabbit. You're on the money, bud. And I do want to give credit where credit is due as far as this goes, because I would have never even went down this particular rabbit hole if it wouldn't have been for JT. So if you're not following JT, on YouTube, TikTok, wherever, he just goes by JT, follows JC. Great guy, amazing, amazing theological knowledge. Great. I mean, this subject goes so much more deeper to even where we are right now with it. But there's a lot more to come. And for instance, Jesus, like I said that they wouldn't pass away until he returned. He did return. And then you can go back and look at what's termed as the Cabbage Patch Kids, right? This would have been kids that would have been resurrected at that point and grown, essentially. It came from nowhere. No moms, no dads, no nothing, which is where the term Cabbage Patch Kids comes from. Memories wiped clean. The world had to be repopulated, which was the orphan trails thing. As we showed you, let's go even further than that to prove that Satan was released from the abyss, and it's right in front of us, and they're putting it in our faces. Right? I'm going to show you a picture. That on the right is Lucifer. That on the left is the Statue of Liberty. Now that painting of Lucifer on your right, if I were to show you the ankle part of that Lucifer has a chain around his ankle, and it's not broken. However, there is a chain around the foot or the ankle of the Statue of Liberty, and that one is broken. As you see right there, the chain is actually broken. Lucifer is free. Lucifer is free. And there are tons of these statues all around the entire world, not just the Statue of Liberty, but if you look up statues of people with 7-pointed crowns, just look that up and look how many there are. There are many representations of Satan with that same exact look of the Statue of Liberty.
I love going down these rabbit holes, and I think that it would be good to kind of, I guess, maybe solidify this theory in whole, because I've also really enjoyed going down the Tartaria rabbit hole, and you can't quite explain everything with just the Tartaria theory, because it relies on a mud flood, and that we excavated a lot. But I think
there's maps now with Tartaria on them. So they told us Tartaria was a theory.
That's been around for a while.
It's much more than a theory, yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain everything in its totality. Like you'd have to, excuse the Bible almost.
What's up, Daniel?
In order to actually have that theory be true. But if you believe that Jesus already came back and we're living through Satan's little season, then it makes the most sense.
It's the easiest thing to believe. It's the only theologically, if you believe the Bible because in order to believe that the millennial reign didn't happen, Christ didn't return, then you would have to believe, well, Jesus said he's returning in their generation, but he didn't really mean that. And what he meant was this, and you have to make all that up.
That's true.
All that would have to be made up. And that's what happened. That's what happened for 1800 years of Christianity. Everyone believed a specific way. There was no theological Christian Zionism or anything like that. That didn't happen until John Darby came along. And then Schofield, who was a Luciferian, wrote what was called the Schofield Reference Bible. And that's when the idea that, like what you brought up earlier, the red heifer would have to be sacrificed, the third temple would be built. None of that stuff is in your Bible, guys. You won't see it. It's not there. That is something that was completely concocted and fed to mainstream evangelical churches and has been preached since the early 1900s. But you won't find it in your Bible anywhere. And I'll go even further. History repeats itself. We're a cyclical people. Left to our own devices, given enough time, you'll be able to liken historical events to things that are occurring now. For instance, Trump did the Abraham Accords. You can say, he's brokering the peace in the Middle East. The 7 years is getting ready to begin. They sacrificed the red heifer, which they did. All of that stuff it's happening, but it's just an after shadowing of something that's already happened because the red heifer was already sacrificed. I just proved to you in Matthew 27, the rapture took place. It happened already. Jesus came back, just like what Tacitus and Josephus wrote about. The Dark Ages occurred. The symbolism as far as Lucifer being set free is right in front of your face. It's all around you. But all I'm saying is take the Bible literally. Read it. And this becomes the most pervasive and persuasive, easiest thing to believe if you take the gospel at face value. Everything else has to be created by man. I had this debate with my cousin when we were in Dallas, and and here's the thing: what he would take the side of the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
But the Catholic Church believed during the Crusades that they had to rule the world before Jesus could come back. So this is why the Crusades happened, because they thought they had to conquer the world. Also, choosing God or loving God is a choice, right? It's a choice. You can't be forced into it. It has to be made out of love. You can't baptize your kids at birth because they're not making the choice to be baptized. So therefore, a baptism 10 minutes after you're born does not count as a baptism. But it is, Revelation 20 is the culmination of when Gog and Magog happen. And then, but you still have things to look forward to, which are, and I'll give you the opposing theory. Some people say it's not 250 years, that it's actually longer, a little between 300 and 400 years, right? Or a little less than 300, anywhere from the 250 all the way up to 350. And it does make kind of sense because look up Apophis, and tell me when Apophis is going to pass by Earth.
Isn't that 2030?
2029, and I believe it's April 13th. And this would line up with Revelations 16:12, which is an opening of a seal. Right? And it says here, and I'll read Revelation 16 and 12 for you. And then it says here, the third angel, excuse me, it's not 16:12, it's 8. And it says, and the third angel sounded, and fell a great star from heaven, burning as if it were a lamp, and it fell upon a third of the rivers, upon the fountains of the waters. And the name of the star was called Wormwood, and a third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were bitter. Now, wormwood or Apophis is going to show up. I think it's April 13th. Am I right?
April, 19th through 20th is what it says.
All right. So, but it's in the year 2029, correct?
Okay. Asteroid 99942 Apophis will make the closest approach to Earth April 13th, 2029. My bad.
All right. So I was right. So this comet is going to fly so close to the Earth that it's going to fly below our communication satellites.
Whoa.
If this
Are you
comet,
sure
if
about
this-
that?
Yes, positive. Go ahead and look it up. It'll fly lower than our communication satellites.
Yeah. Okay. If I read the whole sentence, it says which is closer than many geostationary satellites. So I just had to read the whole sentence.
So this thing is going to enter into Earth's gravity. When things enter into the gravitational pull of the Earth, they change direction. They get pulled in, right? So if this comet even moves 0.01 degrees from its actual course, coupled with Earth's gravity, it will impact Earth. I'm not saying that probably, maybe, nothing. It will, right? So this would be the Wormwood prophecy.
And fire raining down, basically. So once Gog and Magog,
China, Russia, which would happen when the Euphrates River dries up.
That's already dried up.
It's not dried up yet, but it's really, really close. So there was an earthquake that happened in 2013, and it lost most of its water. And then other people and countries up the river dammed it as well. So there are people that go into the Euphrates River and see caves and things they have not ever seen. And people are saying that they hear voices screaming. God says that he trapped 4 angels below that river. And then when that river dries up, those angels will be released and they will make war on the world. Now, those angels, a lot of people believe them to be the horsemen of the apocalypse because there's 4. What color are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse?
Muslim colors.
Yep. So if you take a look at their white,
Green,
black, red, and green.
Yeah.
White, black, red, and green. What color is Iran's flag?
White, black, red, and green.
What color is Turkey's flag?
White, black, red, and green.
Palestinian flag. Afghan flag. All Muslim countries. All Muslim countries. So when God has given us these visualizations to understand who the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are, and is telling us also where they'll come from. And so here it is. They're going to come from Muslim countries. And he talks about a grand deception, right? People are going to be deceived.
We've already been deceived. Like that.
But there's a more grand deception, right? What are they telling us right now? They're telling us that aliens are real, that there are hybrid programs in which people are mating with these aliens to be able to communicate interstellar ways. But we know for a fact that, I believe anyway, for a fact that those are just angels and demons. And I can tell you that because in the book of Daniel fasts for 21 days. And after the 21 days, an angel comes to him, Gabriel. And Gabriel tells him, it took me 3 weeks to get here because I had to do battle with the prince of Persia in the second heaven in order to get here. What is the second heaven?
What is it?
It's space. The first heaven is the sky you see, the firmament. Above that is the second heaven. And in the third heaven, that's where God exists. So he's telling you in modern day English and language that we use today that he had to do battle with this Prince of Persia who was in charge of that region and space in order to get there. Now, if you look at Ezekiel, Ezekiel, he has a wheel inside of a wheel inside of a wheel. This thing comes down and lands and takes him away. Now, he's not the only one. He's not the only one. There are two others. Enoch describes being taken up into the third heaven, where he enters the throne room of God. Now, he said that he went to a city that had I think it was an octagon. I may be wrong. It may be 10 sides, where the walls of the city were made of crystal, and he was inside of the city. Look up the octagon on Jupiter.
Eddie, I got to be honest with you. I am insanely exhausted. I worked almost 20 hours yesterday. I got about 4.5 hours of very broken sleep. I got 3 calls in between. And then I worked another 10 hours today. So I'm starting now to basically zone out and not be able to pay attention. So
you're good. I'm
a lot of what you said,
it
started leaving. And so I'm at the point where I feel like I need to cut it off because I'm getting just overly tired. And I'm trying to focus, but I can feel it. Everything's starting to slip, and my brain's like, Maurice, you need to go to sleep. It's time.
All right, I'm going to show them this octagon on Jupiter real quick, and then we'll close it out. But this,
and we'll continue this another time.
Yeah, this is a perfect octagon, and it's on Jupiter. And here.
Oh yes, the North Pole, right? Or the.
Mm-hmm. That's on the very tip of the planet.
Yes, yeah, I remember seeing that, and yeah. It's good to see more people figuring this out. Good show. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. And it's, you know what? It's a lot more fun than currently what's going on in politics. I tell you what, the recent stream of politics has been driving me absolutely crazy. And a lot of the creators that I used to repost and communicate with, and it's just like, a lot of them just kind of post to post. And it is driving me absolutely crazy. And so I feel like I'm not in an isolated bubble, but it feels like a lot of them they don't have the convictions that they originally came out before they got their millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers. And it's just frustrating. Curious what happened.
I think that what X is getting ready to do by forcing people to actually create original content is going to weed out a lot of those people. And they're no longer just going to be able to repost other people's stuff and get millions of views and get paid for it. Here we go. So here is an actual visual representation of this. Let me take this down first. Something's on the screen. I don't know what. Let me stop sharing and reshare.
Kilburn, I can basically just tell you that a lot of the hosts that we've gone through, because over the years, Eddie and I have remained fairly solid with our morals and principles and who we want to associate ourselves with or take deals with. But a lot of the hosts decide that either one, they can do it better on their own,
or fame is more important than the truth.
Fame is more important, so their morals change. No, maybe not their morals, but their incentives change, so they no longer want to seek the truth or whatever. They're looking for like a big boost so they can start making a lot of money off this. And then others partner with other companies that we don't want to associate with. So
I mean, we've been pretty big, and Maurice has too, with not saying names of people and not putting even company names out there that have done these types of things. And it's kind of the way I want to keep it as well. There's no point in taking shots at folks.
No, and that's the thing is like everybody that we've split away with, we've tried to keep it incredibly cordial. Like I wish them the best. The entire
I
point,
don't hate them. Yeah, I don't hate those people at
yeah,
all.
the entire point of me having, built up a large following, but having these other hosts stream on my account, the entire point of that is to help give them a voice. And if they find something better and their incentives change, then good. Go ahead. I wish you success. It's not something I would do, but that's just me. I'm a weird dude. I like living out in the woods and not having to listen to anybody. So that's
Oh, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Here's the picture of Saturn. That it was actually Saturn, not.
Ah,
Oh, there's something wrong here where it won't let me pull any images up on the screen. Let me
yeah,
remove
that's fine.
some.
I met Alexandria in person, and we didn't have the best interaction. But she seemed to be ha- a lot different. We didn't agree on a lot of things, but overall that's fine. But again, it's just like a lot of these people, when they we say we have the Patriots Prayer Network and you can stream under our name, blah blah blah. We'll try and help you give a voice. They kind of assume that like, okay, I'm going to start making a lot of money soon. Like it's going to start rolling in, right? But that hasn't been our incentive because we don't actively seek out, sponsors or whatever that we disagree with. So whatever it is.
There it is. So,
Boom.
and you see there is the perfect
Saturn's
freaking
butthole.
octagon.
Oh.
It's the perfect octagon. I mean, it just goes even deeper. I mean, the biggest thing I would
That's
tell
a
people to look
hexagon.
at, yeah, hexagon. But look up like how Pope Gregory changed the calendar. Look up how these buildings were built. Look up Josephus and what he wrote about Jesus returning. And then look at your Bible and see what it says. And then realize that the Jews thought they had it down right too. They were waiting for a warrior and they got tricked at the last minute because they didn't understand the scripture. And I always thought, even from a young kid, I said, there's going to be something different about us too. There's going to be something that's going to trick us too. It's not going to be laid out and we're just going to understand it and just take it all in. It's going to be something tricky about it. And there was. It's something very tricky about
it. Troll, I'd say that anyway. You're a cool guy. I don't know what OMGFG means, but I know what OMG. Yeah, I'm right there. I'm slow. I'm like leaning more. This is my first like full week back at work, and I have 56 hours in already, and I'm on call this weekend, so I need.
And I'm traveling around. Maurice and I will be going to an event in Las Vegas in July.
Palooza.
Yeah, the 11th and 12th. We will be there. And then, like I said, we are actively trying to come up with doing our own event as well. So definitely look forward to that. And I will be putting up a Gibson Go for that and talking to some political officials about coming to that. I actually have some really good speakers that have contacted me, people and I'm going to ask them if they wouldn't mind coming and talking because the divide in our party is a lot different than what most people think, and there's a lot more people on the side that we're speaking of than what you think. It's not so one-sided, and you can disagree with Trump. There's plenty of room for dissent in this country, and anyone who, there's plenty of room. That doesn't mean you hate the guy. Doesn't mean you wish him, ill will or you don't want him to succeed because his success is our success. That's so never wish that.
All right, I'm out.
Yeah.
I gotta go to bed.
All right,
I'm passing out. Good night, guys.
Right. Good night, guys.
This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you. If you haven't shared this out, please share this podcast out. I had a lot of fun in it, but my energy level's crashing out.
Yeah, he's crashing out.
Downhill.
But yeah, I'm 2 nights with no sleep myself. But guys, as always, the silent majority, you need to stop being silent and stand your ground. Evil never retreats willingly. It must be beaten back. Have a great night as usual. Hey, if you're not following me, follow me because the interlopers stopped following because I said something bad about Israel. So whatever, I'm not going to stop. Have a great one, guys. We'll see you soon.
Peace.
Tension, midnight gears, hum low. Guitars bend, pads breathing, the slow. Breath held tight, the storm starts to grow. We sharpen the truth, ready to explode. Can't call out rhinos if you're a rhino. Speak with a mic that bleeds, not a path to tone. Oh, cash just saints blink while the crowd loses.